Hey everybody, my name is Aaron Jay and welcome to Habitat Now. It's a real honor to have Jeanette Bokhour joining us from California, from Berkeley, California, at the Marvin Lipofsky's Estate Studio. It is an incredible opportunity to speak with her about the legendary artist, about his career, his life, and his work, and about the work that's going to be in the auction today at 2 p.m. on our Masterworks auction site. For those of you who've been on it before, great. You're probably registered already. If you're not, I will paste the link again in the Zoom for you to join and register and check out the work because everything will be sold today, hopefully knock on wood. But there's some great, amazing pieces in there, beautiful colors, very important work, and museum quality across the board. So without further ado, I'm going to take over your screen, go through a touch of housekeeping I mentioned, and I'm eager to get Jeanette talking to everybody. So we do these Zooms every single Saturday. We'll be incorporating more stuff like this in the future, but we still continue to reach out and visit artists from around the world. And we have a show coming up soon. We'll talk about in 1 second for Susan Taylor Glasgow. She'll be here. She's driving up. She's even bringing her glass dress. So if you haven't seen someone wear this glass dress that she made from that is a corset, it's absolutely stunning. There'll be a model wearing that during our show. She'll have some new work available. It is a masquerade event. So bring your mask and dress up. It's going to be a lot of fun. I haven't the last masquerade event we had was a couple years ago, so you're all invited to come and see us on the 18th. Sarasota Glass Coast Weekend's coming together. The planning looks incredible. It is going to be February 1st through the 4th down in Sarasota, Florida. Please join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. I expect to see all you there, and a lot of artists will come in. So that's all the housekeeping I have. So I'm grateful today to have Jeanette Bokhour join us and speak about the artist. And she's going to be discussing a lot about the works. This platform, having an auction from the estate, is kind of new. It exposes the artist in our Habitat family to the auction audience, which is a totally interesting market of people who intently buy by auction. It's our job to provide this opportunity to support our artists and our Habitat family, and we're grateful for Jeanette for working with us. So I want to point out on our website how to find the auctions real quick. If you go to our habitat.com and go to the top, click there. It's also on habitatauctions.com, but this is the easiest way. So the auction looks like this. It's white. Don't ignore the black screen. I have a black filter on, but I will you have an opportunity to see the work and place your bid. So without further ado, welcome, Jeanette. I appreciate you being here. Say hello. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Hi, Aaron. Hi, everybody. And I really just want to express my appreciation to both Aaron and Corey for helping set this up. I really value the opportunity to meet all of the collectors and those that are just interested in glass and in Marvin in particular. I'm really looking forward to having an open discussion, really. I came to glass very late. Marvin was already 65 when I started working for him, so I don't have the deep history that Marvin has, obviously. But I've had a great opportunity to work with him side by side for nearly 20 years. I worked for him directly for 12 years. I actually met him at an artist breakfast group that used to meet every Friday. And so Marvin would go there religiously when he was in town. And so that was 20 years ago. And I didn't know anything about glass. I was doing digital printmaking at the time. And Marvin saw an opportunity that I would be able to help him with the computer. Everything he had been doing up to that point was by hand or computer, but his slides all needed to be digitized. So that's why I was able to get involved with his work, him and his work. And I didn't really know anything about him or his glass until that summer he happened to have an opening for a retrospective exhibition at the Oakland Museum, and I was able to attend that. And I just went, wow, this guy, there's something about his process that I could really connect to. His sense of abstraction, his ability to layer colors, his color sense was phenomenal. And so took about a year, but eventually he did hire me to help him on the computer. So I started with the computer, just scanning his slides of his work, and then it blossomed from there, I guess you'd say. So yes, eventually, I helped him with all kinds of other tasks in the studio. His hand sometimes was too small to get in the artwork to sand it. So he would have me come down and start sanding things. And then from there, I just started sanding all the edges of all his later work. So it was quite an education. Eventually, he did decide to donate his images, his photography, to the Rakow Museum at Corning. But in order to do that, we had to digitize everything and create a database there. So we sat side by side and I was digitizing and creating a database, and he would tell me every single person that was in the slide, what the event was, where it was. And so that's how I kind of absorbed everything about what Marvin's life had been like up until that point.
Thanks for sharing that content. So it's good to get some grounding of where you came from and how you worked with him, which is fantastic. Why don't you start sharing your screen and tell everybody the formality of it is, this is very informal. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We want you to explore and talk about Marvin and his work. And if you have any questions, feel free to, raise your hand or ask or type in the chat. It's going to be a lot of fun to learn about Marvin's career. Both Corey and I had a great opportunity to meet Marvin a few times over while traveling the world and doing glass shows and exhibitions. So it is a great opportunity to do this with you today, Jeanette. So
happy to do it. I see familiar faces, people that knew Marvin, Kate Elliott, for instance. And so if you have anything to add to whatever I happen to be talking about, please feel free to chime in. I'd love to hear your experience as well. So are we going to share the screen now?
Yep, feel free to share the screen.
Okay, we'll get set up here. Slideshow. Share screen.
You want to click the green button and then share the screen you want to share.
Trying. There.
All right, we're looking at your screen.
See my mess? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
There we go. So let's just move on from this. I wanted you to first feel as if you're with me in the studio. So I just wanted you to have an opportunity to see Marvin's studio. Go back. He moved to California in 1964, and shortly after, he took over the studio of Tio Giambruni, who had been a sculptor who taught up at Davis, I think. So from then on, he was able to work here, and then he purchased the building, and so he was here for over 50 years. And it was packed, I'll tell you. He just had every corner filled with something or other. This was largely storage. There's more artwork in the back. Just every corner you can imagine had artwork in it. Before I move on to a lot of other information, there's going to be things I can't share. I just can't get to in an hour. But I wanted you to understand that we do have a website set up. And one of the aspects in the website, one of the resources, is a timeline of how Marvin worked. And so overall, you begin to see the pace at which he was working. At first, he was a graduate student, came to Berkeley, and then during the pandemic, I was able to be very productive and add a lot of whatever his activities were, whether they were traveling or whether he was holding his own symposiums, attending other symposiums, other conferences, lectures that he gave. And so you can begin to see that he was massively busy and just connecting with all kinds of people all over the world. I think Harvey Littleton had first introduced him to Erwin Eisch in Germany and Siebrun Valkema in Holland. And then from there, it just took off. So we don't have time to go through everything here, but I wanted you to be aware that if you go to his website, you'll be able to access more information than you can shake a stick at. So that's what this time.
Question from the audience is, why did he decide to move to California? And you can answer that later in the talk, should you choose.
No, let's just do it now. He was at University of Wisconsin, Madison. He wanted to be a ceramic sculpture major. Maybe this is a good place to show it. And he just felt like sculpture was where he was going to be at. And there was no glass at the time, studio glass. So he decided to work in ceramic sculpture. And then, yeah, it's going to come up anyway. He was very influenced by John Mason and Peter Voulkos when he saw their work as a student at Madison. And then this is the kind of work he was making as a result of his influence there. Tombstones dedicated to the killing of Kennedy and the killing of some schoolgirls in Georgia, I think it was. And then this is more of what his work was like. So I'm getting around to answering your question. He had his MFA program. Whoops, sorry, go back. He had his MFA show, but at the same time, he was also doing small things in glass. So they had a small furnace. They used these marbles. They got a lot of publicity. They eventually built up the glass program. And then Harvey was very much in demand because he had started something so unusual that Berkeley asked him to come and teach there for a year or two. But he was so dedicated to just developing his own program in Wisconsin that he told Marvin he should apply for the job in Berkeley. And so he did. He wrote his letter and they accepted him. Being a young, recent graduate with wife and child, he just picked up and moved to Berkeley. So that's kind of a long way around to get to it. But that is what was happening with Marvin and how he attended Berkeley. I hope that answers your question.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, so you can see there it was very raw. Nobody was buying furnaces. You really had to build your own and get these kinds of marbles. I think Dominic Lubino, who had befriended Harvey and helped him with trying to figure out how to do this privately, said, well, why don't you use these Johnson, is it Manville, fiberglass marbles. They melt relatively easily, they're forgiving, and you can recycle them if you don't like the piece that you made. So that's what they started out with. I think it was John's Manville, is that the name? And so that's what they were doing. But they were all very small, nothing too fancy. But this is basically Marvin's first glass exhibition. And a lot of the artists, their artwork all kind of looked the same when it came to the glass. It's kind of like learning a language and figuring out what you have to say at the same time. And I think that's the case with any art. You have to find your tools, you have to figure out what you want to say, and then it all comes together. So he was invited to Berkeley. There was nothing there. It was a big empty room. The building had just been built. His was the first class that was going to begin there. And so you see this woman here blowing glass, and they're building the furnaces themselves. Only 6 women showed up to his first class. Idris Eckhart, Edris, excuse me, I was recently corrected, had been doing a little bit of glass, but she was leaving the program and Marvin really built it up from what she had started. There were 6 women. They built their own furnaces, and you see they got them going, glory holes, furnaces, and annealing oven. And they just started in by I think this was the fall of 64. And by the winter of 65, they were going. And I put this in because I just love this photo. It's 1965, women showing up at the studio with their high heels and stockings, their beehive hairdos, and they're on the floor sorting through color so that they can recycle this glass. I just love it. Now, a lot of people talk about pioneering, and Marvin had his own ideas about what that meant. To him, those that had to actually build their own furnaces and really start from scratch were the people he considered pioneers. Sometimes people started in the 70s or later, It had it a little bit easier just because there was glass available. There was a lot more equipment available. But this is what he meant. And so I'm going to show you a film that I found of Marvin working. He started at Berkeley in '64, but at the California College of Arts and Crafts in Oakland, they saw what he was doing. They thought it was really great, and they asked him to do a workshop for the summer. It was an intensive workshop, and they would have to build their own furnaces and work starting from scratch. So this is just a 2-minute clip from that workshop. I thought you'd enjoy seeing it.
Is there any audio to this, Jeanette?
No, this is just a 8 millimeter film. Imagine hearing all the clicking of an 8 millimeter projector.
Gotcha.
That's what you got.
It is running kind of choppy, so we'll just have to look at the visuals as they pass through.
Right. Well, these are the marbles that are melting in the furnace. You'll see that the glass is very stiff, being fiberglass. And the furnace probably isn't hot enough for them to do anything as sophisticated as what they do now. There was no color. You'd have to add your own chemicals to it. You see them trying to blow that piece. Very stiff. And this is all they had to work with, really. Marvin's going to do a little demo here.
Is this video also on the website somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can look for it. I've edited down to 2 minutes, so you don't have to see the whole 15 minute. But you just see the awkwardness of it. And I wanted, especially the collectors, to understand the roots of where they were at when they first started doing this. This is even 2-3 years into it, and it was still very tentative, I would guess to say.
Marvin always had great videographers and photographers around him. Is that always part of the plan?
He was very conscious of it. And I think because there was nowhere else to go to find the information, he created his own library. As a teacher, you're dependent on being able to show the students whatever you can. So he basically filmed as much as he could, and then he photographed as much as he could. He brought in as many people as possible to come and work with the students directly.
It's like he's blowing in the top of the vessel to create an opening. Were there any tools he was known for inventing?
You'll see the wood tools that he created. He may have played with a few metal tools. I think we have one gripper.
Jeanette, with the record keeping, and I've been to the studio and met with you at one point, and I remember you were going through it and it was extremely overwhelming, but how many photographs did you have to go through?
Well, I think what we
document?
I think what we did is we scanned about 54,000 slides of Marvin's, maybe 20 or 30 films. And before we gave his archives to the Smithsonian, I scanned all of his papers. So it's just a lot of scanning and sorting through the information, getting it squared away in your head. It takes time for sure. And I'm still discovering things that I didn't know. These are the student works, and this was the work he had made during that demo. And I found it online at an auction. I didn't know what it was. And looking at this film, I learned, oh, I know what that piece is now. So I thought you'd find that interesting. And this is just Marvin at work. This is 1967. This is his office at Berkeley. And you can see he was just constantly in production mode. He's not teaching, he's producing or traveling to find out more information because it was just very limited. You couldn't just walk into a library and learn how to do this. I think he relied a lot on other ceramicists. There was a ceramics program downstairs, and so he would work with some of those artists as well to figure out what to do. Peter Voulkos was in the building, or at least next door, and John Mason was around. So they exchanged a lot of information to move the process forward. But you just see, it was just endless. Some of these you may also see online somewhere else. I'm going to give you a little audio of Marvin describing his process with the loops and why he did that. Thought you'd like to hear his voice. Oops, let's see. Can you hear this?
Not yet. No, we can't hear it.
No? Okay, nope. Let's stop it.
There might be an option to share sound in the view options button on your screen. Share computer sound. You see that anywhere? Let's see. Let me see if I can set it up real quick.
All right, I did the wrong thing.
This is an interview with Marvin Lipofsky at Ohio.
Kind of heard it there. Play it again. Is it playing at all, Jeanette, or not?
Are you hearing it now?
We cannot hear it. Nope. We may have to skip this part.
I think glass is more than enough. So I try to use the negative shade.
But we can put a link to the talk in the newsletter that goes out.
Using these, the flocking, maybe the flocking came about.
Jeanette, we cannot hear it.
The Oakland Roadster and Hot Rod Show in the Oakland Coliseum, and there was a guy selling.
Jeanette, you can hear it. Can anybody else hear it?
Flocking on cars. I said, oh, that's really interesting. He had made a thing called.
Nope, I guess not. Okay.
I hear it.
I hear it.
Okay.
And I said, oh, can you do that?
I don't hear it.
Why not? So I looked around and started, well, at this time, I've never been a chemist. I did have a color from Kugler, but I didn't use it. It wasn't compatible with the glass we were using. And we couldn't get colors. So I started to go to these little shops that sold flocking for window displays and God, whatever they used. And I would start mixing the colors, and then I mixed them. So I put the color in right away. Grateful.
Can't hear what they're saying.
Things like this, small loops with copper plating, and the copper plating came about because there was an electrical engineer who decided he wanted to do some sculpture and came to me, and he said, "I can tell you how to plate copper on glass." I said, "Oh, great, let's do it." And so we did it, even using on plastic.
I hope you were able to hear that. Did that come through okay?
Some of us could hear it, some couldn't, but we'll share it in the follow-up newsletter for those who can't hear it.
Maybe we can reiterate what the flocking was on the California Loop series, and from what he said, Jeanette.
Jeanette, can you hear us? I don't think she can hear us anymore.
Okay. Oh, well, as long as we can hear her.
Right. That's true.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
can you
we
hear
can
us?
hear you.
I can't hear you. I think that's the problem.
Jeanette, go ahead and keep talking about Lipofsky. It's fine. We'll catch up with Jeanette when she figures out her speakers are not selected anymore. That's what's going on in my mind. I sent her a chat. Your speaker's not selected. That's right.
All right. I think I'm getting there. I'm so sorry about the disruption.
We hear you. Go ahead. Talk. She can catch up in a second here.
Yeah, I apologize.
Janet, let me know if you can hear me. Just go ahead and keep on talking.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, great.
I apologize. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I have to do the presenter view and then to resume the share. So
You've already got the share going. You're doing fine there.
yeah, okay.
Yep, just go ahead and click on the continue play from current slide. You can keep.
Okay. Okay, here we go. These were the loops. Did you hear this? What was
Yep,
happening?
we're good on that. Go ahead and keep going to the next thing.
Okay. So the next thing that happened following the loops was Marvin's work at Blanco. Joel Philip Myers had invited him to come and just work in the evenings at the factory, see what was going on. He was a little concerned that Joel was all alone out there in West Virginia. So he started just experimenting around, and this was his real first experience working in a factory setting. And he was quite comfortable in it. It's kind of amazing. It's a little bit of a harsh environment for somebody that's just trying to make very personal work, but he was able to do it. And one of the first pieces you'll see that's available at the auction is this piece right here. And I didn't know it at the time, but Marvin had actually made this piece using Blanco molds. So you'll see a shape like this. And what Marvin liked was when you typically they close the mold completely and then they make the shape of a bottle. But Marvin would only close it partially and let it ooze out. And that was kind of his favorite part of the whole process. He didn't necessarily want to wind up with a whole bottle, but he really enjoyed that aspect of the glass, just doing what glass does, which is often a lot of oozing. And then I believe this is Blanco red color that Joel had sent him. And I found all of these molds in the studio, kind of buried in the back. So he actually had all these Blanco molds to play around with. So I think that's what that is. This has some kind of light fuming on it as well, which adds to the color, the dimension of it. It's a really beautiful piece.
Great to have such a historic piece in the auction.
Yeah, it was really interesting pieces that you find in the studio. This I wanted to show you for two reasons. One, this is Marvin actually using one of the molds in Yugoslavia. Now it's Serbia, but you see him. Someone's holding the glass and they're going to insert it into the mold, and Marvin will really keep the mold partially open, maybe 2 inches or so. And inside, Marvin places these wood fingers. You can see them here. And they're sitting inside the mold. So that on one piece of the glass, you'll get these divots, which is this part. And then on this side of the mold, you get the bulging out. And that he was able to create a lot of forms that way. This is pretty early on in his practice, but he had been to a few factories. He wanted to be involved. He didn't want to just be a designer who watches somebody else make his work. So this is what was happening with Yugoslavia. Now, at the time that he arrived there, Tito, I think, had just died. The country was in chaos. And also the chemist who knew all the formulas for the glass had just died as well. And the factory didn't quite have it together. In terms of understanding the compatibility of all their colors. So here, it looks like he had a great day in Yugoslavia, all kinds of colors, all kinds of shapes, forms. And then the next day he woke up and it was all shattered. So unfortunately, you can travel halfway around the world and it doesn't mean that you'll be able to bring back everything you made. I think the museum insisted they keep a few pieces that did survive. So maybe there were 10 pieces overall that did make it. This is a piece that's at the National Museum of Modern Art in Kyoto. This is one of the pieces the factory and the museum saved for themselves. And then this is the one that's in the auction that we have. It's a beautiful piece, and you can see that those fingers that he had kind of submerged into the mold, into the glass, and then the little seam where he left the mold open.
Very nice.
In 1972, Marvin went to a symposium. There were lots of symposiums at the time. And that was his first time meeting Gianni Tozzo. And they ended up becoming fast friends for life, really. I mean, Gianni and Marvin really just had an understanding of each other, how they worked, how serious they were. And you may know Gianni from mostly his lamp working, but he had actually worked in the factories for many years growing up. So everybody in the factory knew Gianni. They were happy to let him come in and work with Marvin. So he came in 72 to work at the Vanini factory with Marvin. And then he also worked with Marvin at the Fratelli Tozzo factory. And it's kind of amazing that they would just allow artists to come in and work in the factories. You can't really do that in the United States. Insurance, unions, factories don't shut down like they do in Europe. So this is the work that he did at the Fratelli Tozzo. You can see it's kind of being packed in all kinds of hay. That's how they were shipping things, in a big crate with hay. And it all arrived at the studio. And, you know, it takes a great imagination, I think, to look at a piece and figure out, what am I going to do with it? How will I cut it? What will really add to the flow of it? And this is a piece we have in the auction he made with Gianni, and he just made a few slight cuts to it, and it just sets it on fire. It's really an amazing piece. Symposiums, more about symposiums. Symposiums are really amazing. What happens is the factories shut down for a week. It gives the workers a chance to do something else. They stop production. I wouldn't say they're not blowing glass, and then they invite a dozen or so artists to come and work in the factories to fulfill their dreams of making larger pieces or different pieces, just having access to better materials, bigger materials. And so Marvin was invited to many of these symposiums. The one in Novi Bor, Czechoslovakia in 1982, he wasn't an official participant. He had gone in June to work there at the invitation of Stanislav Lubinsky. And then, so he was able to make a series of work at that time. And then Stanislav said, oh, why don't you come back and observe the symposium when you come? And so a few months later, he went back to Czechoslovakia and saw what was going on there. This is Marvin's mold. Very hard to see this picture, but I wanted you to understand that Marvin's way of working was to not only just decide, okay, I want this piece of wood to mold the factory, but he wanted the objects that he found in the factory to be also part of the creation process, so that his environment is incorporated into the glass. And you'll be able to see that later on. This is the symposium. The community comes in. It's exciting for them. It's exciting for the workers to actually be doing something different and trying to assist the artists in their plans. But you'll notice Marvin's little wood fingers are here. These springs are here. Other devices that he found in the factory. And then you can see remnants of that in this glass. You'll see springs and all kinds of divots and just different experiences from his travels. So he wasn't just sort of blindly throwing in anything, but he wanted to somehow communicate his experience. And one time he told a friend of his, my work is about my work, basically, which is probably the case of many artists, but he had a way of articulating it differently. Again, this is a symposium. He went later. He went probably every 3 years for many years. And you can see that it's an intense situation there, very smoky, cameras on him. This isn't an artist privately working in his studio, removed from the world. And at this time, Czechs, there was the fall of the Soviet Union. And so Marvin and the people were very much in a celebratory mood, and Marvin really appreciated what they had been able to do. So this series is called Czech Flowers. And he would try to find ways to celebrate their newfound freedom. And he would do that often in his work. Here, he blew the glass, and then following the work days, they would have a big reception, and the artists would show their glass in a reception hall. And so Marvin would make these big floral bouquets out of his glass. Later on, they were cut, and that's the pieces that you saw before, those cut pieces. Why do I keep doing that? So here I go again. Pilchuck. Everybody knows Pilchuck, I think. This was Dale Chihuly's personal project to establish his own glass school. And in 1971, he was able to secure some property with the help of John and Ann Hauber. This photograph, I think, is from around 1974, kind of a ragtag group of glass art enthusiasts came together and they built their own school. And when Marvin went there, he went there several times. He went there in the 70s, although there's no series that resulted from that. But, when you're able to really remove all the distractions, you're able to just produce. And he had tremendous help while he was there. Rich Royal, Robbie Miller assisted him. Some of you may know them. And once again, this is his mold. Again, he took whatever he found at Pilchuck and used it to express what was going on into his art. He also talked a lot about the weather. So some of these you'll see are entitled by what the weather was at the time and how it influenced his art. And here he is carving his tools again, or carrying around his tools. It's so productive. And these are some of the pieces that he made. And you'll see these pieces at auction. These were from 1984, I believe, and these are from 1988. But they're all very much influenced by his environment. Again, you can see that screen impressed into the glass.
Amazing collection.
It's beautiful, really beautiful. Marvin went to Japan many times. I think the first time he had a student at CCAC whose father owned a factory, a glass factory. And so the student was studying art, and then he came and studied glass with Marvin for a short time. And so the student invited Marvin to come work at his parents' glass factory. So this is the kind of production work that they were doing at the factory. And you can see how it influenced Marvin's colors here. Sometimes he was limited to use only the colors the factory had, but often it just suited whatever he was trying to do at the time. And you'll see he really started focusing more on sandblasting the pieces. And a lot of the very early pieces, he didn't sandblast, but he started to really appreciate how by removing the reflections, you could really see the form better. That was his thinking. I know other people like the shininess of the glass, but, and then you'll see in Japan, things tend to be kind of small when he worked. So the work that he made in Japan tended to be small. He was in very tight enclosures when he had to do the work. And in Japan, again, he had met a fellow named Chioji Asahara, who started his own glass studio in Otaru, excuse me. And so here he is in Otaru, cutting his own wood forms. Again, very tight space, but he ended up making just an incredible series of pieces there. This one in particular is really addressing the environment of Japan, where he saw nothing but ocean and cherry trees and the beautiful greenery around. So it was very much a commentary on what he saw in his environment. He went to Bulgaria. Now, all of these symposiums he kept going to had people from all over the world. And I think that in large part explains how he managed to get invited to so many places. He had met Reiko Rakov at a symposium, probably a Czech symposium. And Reiko invited him to Bulgaria to come and work there. And then following the work, they were able to have an exhibit pretty immediately after the work. So this is a small exhibit of some of the pieces that he made there. Language never seemed to be a problem, never seemed to be a barrier. I found a couple of lists that he made, you know, saying, okay, what's the word for blow? What's the word for stop? What's the word for start? And so he would just have this little cheat sheet. And sometimes he could just draw it and they'd immediately know what he was going after. So this piece, he didn't sandblast, and it's just a beautiful piece. He didn't often leave a piece like this, but I think it's really exceptional. He went to France in 1990. Claude Moran was someone that had been working in his family's business. I think the family had some kind of a textile mill, and eventually that closed down. And so Claude was looking for other avenues of art expression. And so he worked in wood and he did some other things, but he came to glass. And there was, in the 1970s, there was nobody really doing studio glass in France. So he started his own studio. And he did incredible work for many years. Marvin brought him to the United States to do a little symposium at his school. And once again, you can see Marvin just incorporating whatever he found in the studios. And at this small personal symposium that Claude held, he invited all the heavy hitters. Erwin Eisch, this is Claude, it's Harvey Littleton, Marvin, and Sybren Valkema from Holland. And so it was a very beautiful personal time away in this incredible lush environment in France. And so once again, you know, a little tribute to freedom and the beauty that he saw in France. And later on, he cut into them. This one actually hangs on the wall. He tried something different for a little bit. Poland, another fellow that he had met at a symposium was Kazimierz Pollock, who was Polish, and he invited Marvin to come and work in Poland. It's a small factory called the Violetta factory. And at that time, Marvin went there. It was very cold, you could see. And so he used the colors of blue and brown to represent all the cold environment of Violetta. It's very beautiful. Again, you can see it's a pretty tight environment there. The community can come in and watch. I don't know how dangerous it is. Hopefully it isn't too dangerous. But yeah, you can once again see this is very intense, heavy work that he was doing. Lauscha. Marvin hadn't been invited to work at Lauscha in 1989, but because he couldn't get his visa fast enough, he wasn't able to go. And the story he was told is during the course of the symposium in 89, someone stole the American flag. It was missing. And nobody knew what happened to it. And finally, they discovered a young boy had taken it so he could sleep with it. And he just felt like that was the closest he was ever going to get to the United States. And that really touched Marvin in a very deep way, that People are really counting on the United States, and it's their dream to live with some kind of freedom. So Marvin determined at that time that he would go to Laosha the next time an opportunity came up. So this is the piece that he made while he was there the next time in 97. Again, very large factory space. His response to the environment was very much reds and blues and greens, because that's the lushness of the environment at the time in Laosha. And they had the celebration, they had the gallery exhibition right on the factory floor. They had the dinner on the factory floor. They had the glass princess here and the band while they're blowing glass. I just thought that was very interesting cultural activity there.
Great stuff so far, Jeanette. We have about 15 minutes left.
Okay. Kentucky series. Everybody probably knows Stephen Powell. He worked on these very detailed artworks, very meticulous person. And he had some extra Marini, would you call this Marini? Pieces. And he invited Marvin to work at his school. And he said, well, yeah, you can use some of my extra pieces here, glass remnants. And so Marvin wasn't as exacting as Stephen at all. Marvin's much more, let's just see what happens. And so they were just blowing the glass like that. It's one of his more popular series. You could see some of the glass mutating here. And this is what came out of it. This is, I think, the last piece we have of his from this series in the studio. And the colors are just incredible. Here he is. We miss Stephen a lot. Huh? Spain. Now, we only have very few pieces from Spain that he had made. And I think at the time he was just traveling so much that he never got around to cutting into these. But we feel that they're still so beautiful that they're worthy of being considered a complete piece by Marvin. They're really incredible. His sense of color was just really amazing. So this is a school, and it was also another symposium. This is a 2-minute video of Marvin working in a glass factory in Slovakia. I thought you'd be interested in seeing how it works.
Another video with no audio, right? So many people helping out.
Can you see this?
Yep. Methodical tools pushing into the glass.
Yeah, this is more of a factory setting. So these guys, this is what they do every single day. They get up, they have their coffee, and they literally make glass, and they're to such precision. So this is the type of people you want working on your art, on your sculpture.
Always interesting to see how the work is managed based on the weight, what kind of tools are around. And Marvin looks happy here.
He's very happy when he's working. He's happy.
Like tones and colors and textures. Very productive trip.
You know, you'd think so. And yet, at the same time, when the pieces came back, the colors weren't compatible so much. So many of them have spontaneously shattered in the studio. So it's kind of another tragedy. These have been around for 20 years now. We know they're solid and we love them, and we wanted to make them available. This is Marvin at Tacoma. We're winding down here. Tacoma, this is probably one of the last times that he worked in a large facility. If you've been to Tacoma, you know that it's huge. They have a great audience. You can actually sit and watch the artists at work very comfortably. very skilled artisans working with Marvin, and he could make pieces bigger than he had ever made before. I mean, they were just tremendous. And you'll see this was also super productive, and the size of the pieces were just amazing. It was just amazing, but so much so that Marvin's health prevented him from finishing no more than 5 or 6 pieces, I think. But this, we felt like the workers, the assistants had asked him, oh, let's do a different shape. So Marvin created this one with them. And that's it. That was a lot to say. Sorry about the technical glitches.
That is okay. Well, I appreciate you joining us today. Go ahead and stop sharing your screen. If anybody has any questions, this would be the time for sure. Some wonderful works, great collection from the archives, and it's an honor to be able to offer them at the auction that happens. Starts in about 10 minutes on the live auctioneer site. Corey, do you have something to add?
Yeah, Jeanette, that was absolutely fabulous. It was absolutely fascinating. I mean, I didn't realize that he would go from country to country. I knew that, but I didn't realize he would pick up tools and what was around the studio to really, make, you express his feelings and his ideas with what was around his, and, finding from from different environments. I never saw that before. I never understood that. And it's like almost like the act of making the piece is like just as important as the piece itself. So, I mean, just absolutely fascinating. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's an honor to be able to do it. If anybody else has any questions, please go ahead.
Great that the estate was able to keep such treasures over time and enjoy them. Now we can get a glimpse into of all of them that were made. There are pieces still available that are now, around. And it's interesting that Marvin had so many pieces that he was making that he couldn't finish. That's a very interesting point too.
It's a phenomena that happens with a lot of artists' estates. They think, oh yeah, I'll get back to it. And with the Slovakian pieces, they're so beautiful, but he even tried to re-anneal them. He brought them over to John Lewis's factory to re-anneal them, and it still didn't work for many of them. So they're just in state, they're just sitting as the first phase of artwork, and we just won't cut into them. But they're still beautiful, even in that state. They're incredible.
Right. It's like a different tier, right? You have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
That's right. That's right. Different.
You have a tier 1 piece versus a tier 3 piece. It's all about.
That's right.
Where it was left.
There's an unfinished Rothko from the estate. I don't know if you guys know this, that an art critic, was over there at the estate, and he was reading so much. He just fell so much in love with the work that he decided to finish the piece.
No, he finished it
Unbelievable.
himself.
Yeah, he finished I mean, it was totally just destroyed his career, destroyed the piece. Like everything about it was, he felt he was so connected to it that he could do that. And just, you can't. When an artist stops, they stop. I mean, it was really
There was a gallerist that did that with, I think, a David Smith piece, where he didn't want David Smith to paint one of his steel structures white, and David Smith did it, and so the gallerist undid it after Smith died. The liberties people take. It's like, I know better.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Well, with 5 minutes left till the auction starts, or 7 minutes, I want to wish you all a great weekend.
Aaron, why don't you go? I'm sorry to interrupt. Why don't you go and one more time, because there's some people that took off and some people came on. I noticed. Why don't you show us again how to register for the auction, how to get on there?
Sure. I'll paste the link again in the Zoom, and if you're on our habitat.com page, I'll pull it up real quick just to show you. Hopefully, I can do that without closing my auction meeting. 1 second. Where is it? That's my PowerPoint skill set. Oh, here it is. Okay, so on there, I'm gonna get to my share screen, and I'll show you. Share. Voila. So on our auction site, on our Habitat website, on top here is view the auctions. It's always up there, whether it's live auctions or not. And once you get there, it takes you to our Masterwork sites, and there you are at the live auction. You can enter the webcast or view the lots right now, and able to see every single piece and place bids. The pre-bidding is closed, but the live bidding has started because the auction starts real soon here. And be able to peruse all the pieces that Jeanette just talked about and have an idea of what they look like. There's other work in the auction too. So feel free to take a look and whatever, there's some great treasures in there to add to your collection. So honored to have you again, Jeanette. And if you have any questions, contact me anytime, guys. We'll see what trickles out today. It's gonna be a good time.
Oh, also, I'd like to mention that this is a very fast-paced auction. So it's not like our usual Habitat auctions where a lot comes up. It's going to go, it's going to have, the three-step 1, 2, 3, and then next piece. It's going to be very quick and very efficient, unlike the rest of our business. No, but it'll be fun. So please join in and experience. This is the first time that the Lipofsky estate and Jeanette has allowed us to work in this type of process. And these were archived pieces. These are the ones that were held back, in part of the collection. So this is the first time they're released. So it's a great opportunity.
And it's great all around. So thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you next week, and we'll see you at the auction in a few minutes here. Thank you again, Jeanette.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Everybody. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and share with your friends. Bye-bye, everybody.